growth hacking book that sold over 40,000 copies. He's also the co-founder of a growth marketing agency, Web Profits, and the founder of several companies, including Single Grain, Mailshake, and Link Texting. In his 14 years as a marketer and entrepreneur, Sujan has helped hundreds of companies boost online traffic and sales, and ultimately strengthen their online brand and reputation. So we're really excited to have Sujan here to sort of get his perspective on things we can all do better. Sujan, thanks for joining us. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, thank you for the nice introduction. Yeah, nothing really to add. I run a company, so with all my SaaS companies, it's called Ramp Ventures. So that's the parent company which owns and operates all of them. So yeah, between the work we've done on the consulting side, my own software companies, and the clients I've done before, I've helped about 137 companies successfully grow. So lots of hard-learned lessons. I don't mean to brag. It's just like I learned a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and then I figured out stuff that does work 137 times. So yeah, that's the extent of my knowledge here, or where I'm coming from.
Excellent. Well, it's interesting segue. So you talk about your is it Ramp Ventures, right? That's the
Ramp
Ventures. Sorry, I mispronounced
yeah,
that. What's the common thread that you look for when you're bringing on a new company or starting a new company under that portfolio? Can you give us some perspective?
Yeah. So I mean, I think when we look at our portfolio, what the companies have in, like what our companies have in common, and they're very, very focused on the customer first, meaning the product is around that. Maybe it's the UX, maybe it's we're winning on pricing, and we customers love that part of it, or we have one little thing that sets us apart. But it's something that a customer does and says. So I always try to put the customer first, and then think about what marketing or what things we can add value, what we can do to add value to that customer's lives, or expand the product. So really, that's what it is. I think about not just the customer, but the customer experience. And don't get me wrong, we are nowhere near perfect on any of these companies. Every company probably has a handful of things at least that are known issues, and probably a lot more unknowns. But that's our mission, right? It's to kind of try to win, because we're going to serve the customer the best. And that might not always be the best product, but it may be like for example, Mailshake. We built that based off of reading and looking through and talking to customers of our competitors who are just sick and tired of paying a ridiculous high price or using a clunky or hard to use software. So we just were like, let's just build the exact opposite of it. Super cheap, really easy to use, and it does the one or two things that the salespeople really want to do. So
excellent. Are there any new companies in your portfolio that you want to sort of highlight, or that represent new challenges for you?
Yeah, so we just acquired a company called writeinbox.com. It's a Gmail extension, and really it's a competitor to like Boomerang or Yesware. I think we've got about 250,000 users. So that's a lot of users. We got tens of thousands of people even signing up every month. And I'm not trying to brag here, but what I'm showcasing this is that there's a lot of customers that we can, and people we can go to get lots and lots of feedback. So again, one of the biggest things we're doing, we acquired this company in July. We're going through still and talking to customers, building in these feedback loops, whether they're positive feedback, like an NPS system where, NPS score system where the customer would rate us positively, and we ask them for a review out on the Chrome store or on G2 Crowd, Get App, wherever, or feedback loop of like, we do a bad job, but they tell us what's wrong, or feedback loop of what kind of features, functionality, or even what they're using it for, so we know where to develop new functionality. So 3 months in, that's what we've done now, and we've learned a ton. We're still implementing things, but yeah, ultimately I want to just showcase that we don't just talk about this, we walk the talk. So
it's great. So you talk about how important a feedback loop is, and I think that's great. So what kind of common things do you find that your portfolio companies or other companies you work for struggle with most when it comes to sort of marketing and trying to grow a digital business or SaaS business?
Yeah, so I see three things, like really three big things across the board. One is most companies are me focused, or like they're focused on themselves and thinking about themselves first, and then they're like, how can my company achieve growth, right? And or how can my company get in front of these customers? I think it should be backwards. It's there are this pool of people, your potential customers, they're sitting around hanging out somewhere on the web. How can you best serve them and get in front of them?
Mhm.
What can you create to get in front of them, right? And so when you put the when you turn it around, it's like you turn around your headline copy, and you take the customer's voice or words, and you use it to market to them instead of you describing your product. You use your customers to describe your product. And so again, this is a very big thing I see wrong with the industry, because when you go with me first mentality, you're guessing a lot of the times, right? You're not talking to the customers.
Right.
You're not always doing things that you're trying to match two dots, right? You and the customer, when you should be really thinking about, here's the customer, and
Mhm.
then figuring out what you can do to put a string down from that company to you. Uh,
Right.
Small frame set, mindset change. So number two is um, every single company I've ever come across, whether it's a client or a company we're acquiring, has an acquisition or an activation problem. And what I mean by this is, if you're SaaS, it's you get people to sign up. Well, there's a sign up problem, so there's a conversion problem in general. But the key part I see is an activation. So you've gotten someone to sign up, but how do you get them to implement, right? So take checkout for example. Your customers, these are all assumptions here. So B2B, right? E-commerce, anyone that needs payment. Well, you get them to, they're interested. They set up a call. They're like, okay, I'm going to implement this. The activation part is them actually doing something significant to implement it on the back end. The checkout process doesn't mean they go live. That's where a lot of software companies fail, in my opinion. But the same goes with e-commerce and really marketplaces and everything like that. Like if you're in a marketplace, if you're an Uber, yeah, you get somebody to download the app, yippee. You get somebody to go get a ride, great. You've gotten further, but what if I told you their activation point is 3 rides, right? And so the marketing should all be focused on, how do you get users to take 3 rides? If you're to checkout, how do you get people to implement your checkout process, your checkout flow or whatnot? What tools can you create, whatever? I think there's a big weak point, um, and that's the hurdle around conversion as a whole. And I think number three is too many ideas get executed. So I think too many people do a lot of things,
Mhm.
and what that means is they do a lot of things of which only some of them are impactful. But if you end up doing a lot of things, you end up not being able to do them to the best of your ability, because you're using resources across multiple things. What I've seen is generally every company we've audited or analyzed, and I'm talking in the due diligence process, looking at everything, I find there's only a handful of channels or things that actually really work well. And if somebody were to double down in those channels versus try new things, they would have way more success. So I urge new marketers or software founders or anybody listening to this to think about all your ideas, list them out. Don't pigeonhole your ideas, but then sleep on it, wait a week, and then think through the impact those ideas will have. We use the ICE framework.
Okay.
It's really it's really measuring the impact, the ease of implementation, and the overall score of like how much this is going to move the needle for us.
Excellent. So it's interesting. I mean, that's a great perspective, by the way. So when you come into a new company situation, you acquire a new company, like obviously you talk about changing the mindset to be, customer focused or outside in, and then really focusing on key kind of inflection points in the conversion cycle, right? And then obviously focus is huge. How do you go about identifying the conversion points that matter, and more importantly, how do you change the mindset? Like what do you do in that situation? What are some tangible things maybe some of our listeners can think about to turn the boat, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, so the exercise I would do is just a kind of a brainstorming exercise and say, okay, like put a pin in everything you've got now. Like don't change anything. Let's just start fresh. You're this XYZ company. You want to your potential customers are, small businesses or, B2B company, whatever, who's the buyer. So what I'm talking about here is doing kind of a bit of an exercise on like customer persona. Throw on a whiteboard, okay, these are my three buyers. Then think about, with no limits in the world, what can you do to market or get in front of them? One of them could be knocking on the doors. Okay, how many people would you need for that, right? It's obviously not viable or plausible to do that, but then at some point after maybe 50 ideas, you start getting some good ones that are actually applicable. But I think doing this brainstorm is a really, really powerful thing because you end up just getting everything out of the way, like whether it's a good or bad idea. And then kind of going back and thinking through, okay, what is the impact? Forget how hard it is going to be to do this or execute this, but think about what's the impact each is going to be, and think about it in terms of customers. So here's a couple of things you need to do while you're doing this. You need to estimate your conversion rate. You need to estimate the retention, and forget the retention first. Just think about how much traffic your idea can bring, the conversion rate, and you want to measure against the impact in terms of how many customers this is going to bring. What you've effectively done over the course of maybe a half-day exercise here, it could be an hour to half day or a day, is you've made a list of all the ideas possible that you can think of with your team, and then the number of customers each one will bring based off a conversion rate that's you've all whether that's right or wrong, you're using that across the board, so it's consistent.
Sure. So I've talked with other companies and been in positions where we've tried to look at doing some of those things, and it's easy to get caught up sometimes in analysis paralysis, right? Sometimes there's just so much you can look at. So what's your perspective on going with sort of instinct or kind of high level intuition versus digging into the data? Where do you draw the line, and how do you sort of coach people to think about that?
So I totally hear you. I think that's another kind of common problem here is that people are just digging into the numbers way too much, which is great. I would go based off experience, which then use that to drive instinct. So look, you're a new let's say you're marketing for a new industry, or you're the CEO of a company you've not like lived, breathed for that long. Talk to people that have marketed to your customers, right? So like, go talk to the marketing or executives at companies that sell to your customers. For example, with Mailshake, I went and talked to everyone else selling to salespeople. I talked to the VP of marketing and VP of sales at Pipedrive. I went and talked to a few marketers. I try to recruit a few marketers for my competitors, right? So what I was trying to get to was ultimately get somebody's, whether if it's not my experience, it's somebody's experience, then who can drive intuition. So I think it's when you have that experience, that's way more than any type of analysis can do. And again, you can use something like clarity.fm. You don't need industry experience always. You can also use channel experience. So for example, my background's in SEO. Like that's what I started in as a marketer back in the early 2000s. And so naturally, I'm a stronger inbound marketer. Organic traffic is my thing. When it comes to paid, I can do it. I've done it lots of times now, but that's just not my core expertise. And so instead of analyzing everything related to paid, or should I do it or whatever, I'm going to go talk to somebody who's done it 100 times over. And so I go talk to a channel expertise. I use a service called clarity.fm or another one called Cloud Peeps. Essentially, I'm buying people's time, getting their input, and it just reduces me making an analysis on something I don't know about.
That's good. Tell me about a time where you did all that stuff and it didn't work out. You screwed it up and you learned from it.
Yeah, even the best people don't know everything. Yeah, so I mean, I think I've done this many times. With Mailshake, I'll give you an example. So Mailshake is the one in our portfolio that we started ourselves. The other ones we've acquired. Mailshake originally started as a tool called contentmarketer.io. So we now serve salespeople. That's our customer base. It's a little bit of marketers as well, because you can use it for link building and outreach, but we're a sales tool predominantly. We were a marketing tool. We're a content marketing tool, because we pretty much a very similar product to what we have now, but we were trying to target marketers. I talked to about 25 or so customers. So I was like, behind the story behind building this company was like, let me build something in a market I know. I know marketing. I know enough marketers to validate whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. We validated everything. Everyone's like, yes. I even pre-sold about 150 seats on the software, gave a very big discount, was able to build about 3,000 person email list, 150 sales before we launched, gave them a steep discount. So we were able to get to some sort of revenue, but then we got stuck. And the reason we got stuck was like, I had confirmation bias. Every one of my friends, every one of the people I've talked to that were not friends, people in the industry, were like, yes, this is a great idea. It was a great idea, except for the fact that no one wanted to actually use the software, right? Or that it's a lot of work. Like, so we're a content marketing outreach tool. In order to promote your content, you have to have really awesome content. So the other hurdle was that, like, yes, this is a genius idea, except for the fact that not everybody has awesome content, right? And so then I was like, let me go try to train people on how to build awesome content. And still, that went from like, the bar being awesome content to promote, and currently we were getting crap content. It went from crap content to slightly better crap content. Still wasn't the bar you needed. So what we ended up building is a tool for the elite marketers that were already creating awesome content, who already had a successful process, and we're just making it easier. But we thought we were making it easier, but changing a habit is a lot of hard work. So ultimately, confirmation bias, everyone validated the idea, people even paid for it, but when it came down to actually using it, no one did.
That's funny. Hey, so referring back to your book, 100 Days of Growth, when you talk about, like, of the 100, what are some of your kind of like your favorites when you're given a summary, or someone asks you about it?
Yeah, so a few of my favorites is really creating content. So I like to create content like ebooks, guides, videos, any type of 10x content on a topic you can use to really just educate the market, right? So don't worry about intent. I would actually say non-intent keywords are better here. Okay. And make something 10x would be just something 10x better than what else is out there. And just create something huge and put a lot of ammo behind it around promoting it, pushing it to your email list. So that's one of my favorite tactics, because do this a couple times over, and what you end up getting is all of these destinations where people will link to over time, assets that will grow and continue to build your brand while you work on something else. Number two is surveying the people who visit your website. So this is CRO 101, but don't use it for CRO. Use it for just figuring out how do you describe your service or what you do. So ask people when they come to the website, what's the problem that you're looking to solve, right? And then get the most common responses and turn it around on them. Or ask people what their biggest problems are, or maybe it could be your customers. The number three thing is, or number four here, is to delight your customers. So you get people through the funnel, send them a mail, like send them a thank you card, send them a book you think they would need. So I use this executive assistant or virtual assistant company called Priority VA. Awesome service, pretty expensive for a VA, but well worth it. But when I had a kid, a few months ago, and I had posted on Facebook and I love F1. So I was watching Formula One. I was taking care of my kid. I put a Formula One hat on him and me. Obviously, it didn't fit him. It just took over his head. But I just posted a picture. Well, like a couple of days later, after I posted that picture, I got a surprise package in the mail, and the Priority VA people were like, "Hey, I just sent you a little something. You should see a DHL package in a couple of days." And it was like a onesie for the baby. Like, so that was a delight. Didn't expect it. Didn't even think that anybody would give me that. And the fact that they saw a picture and they took an action is the thing that was why I would not churn. Like you would have to really twist my arm. They would have to screw up 10 times over for me to churn because they hit my heart,
Right.
not my logic, right? And so at wheniwork.com, where I was a VP of marketing before Ramp Ventures and Web Profits, we would send these handwritten thank you cards. And that worked really, really well because people were like just shocked that we actually did something physical. And we would draw their logo on the thank you card. And we did one thing further. We would have the salesperson that they talked to actually sign the card. Now, realistically, it was the marketing people, the marketing department that were just signing off the card based off the salesperson that they worked through based off our CRM. But like that hit home. And we ended up turned out about 10 or 12% of people that received a thank you card shared it on social media. And they weren't sharing it on social media saying, here's a picture thank you card. It was an actual testimonial. So if you think about it, we got a testimonial in the first month of somebody using our software before they even actually fully utilize the software. So things like that can be really, really powerful.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the birth of your child. It's exciting.
Thank you.
That's good insight. So who out there, I mean, you mentioned some examples, but are there some companies out there that you look at as role models that do this stuff really, really well, that are just kind of way above everybody else?
Yeah, I think drift.com does a good job. They're creating content products that solve people's problems, lots and lots of and they treat their customers right. They do this exact thing I'm talking about with customer delight, and what it is really customer advocacy. And buffer.com, I'm listing out tech companies because these are very obvious. You can go look at them, go purchase their service and go see what it is. Buffer does a really good job when their monthly invoices are actually company updates. And I'm like, wow. So like I don't know about you, I never read an invoice. Like I just forward it to my accountant or do nothing with it. But this one I do, right? And it's like, wow, okay. It's like their company retreat, how many people, it's a picture of it, pretty much humanizes them, and it gets me as a customer on their journey. And what that means to the business is that makes a stickier customer. So yeah, I think those two companies are really good examples. And there's a service called maillift.com, no affiliation. They will do handwritten thank you cards or letters and things like that on your behalf. So you can even automate it if you're really lazy.
Cool. So when you're talking to entrepreneurs, right, who are just starting out, what types of these things, right? 'Cause there's a ton of things you talked about, right? And it's, to your point about focus, like, what are the kind of the training wheels things that you recommend that entrepreneurs should really focus on to get started and then evolve into some of maybe these more sophisticated things?
Yeah, I think I always go with the really, really simplistic view of like what are the one or two things that could really grow the business, and focus on one or two things at a time. I usually try to focus on one channel, getting it working, or one effort, right? So if it's like a product, a feature, or functionality, what have you, just focus on the one thing. As that starts to work, introduce a second thing where you can spend maybe 20-30% of your time. I see entrepreneurs too many times, like they kind of spread themselves too thin. So I suggest they focus on the one or two things that can really move the needle. And don't believe everything you read, listen to, hear, whatever. Everything you read, listen to, hear about should be all inspirations for you then to get ideas.
Okay.
And those ideas should always be vetted in terms of how much this is going to move the needle, because that's really what's going to help you get out there, because no two businesses are the same. And worst thing you can do is like, if I gave you an example of Mailshake, we've been at it for 4 years now. If what we do today, I would not have done 4 years ago for myself, right?
Sure.
And so you have to think about the journey. Another thing I would do is, depending on where you are as an entrepreneur or your business is, focus on the next zero of customers. So if you have 100 customers, think about how you can get the next 1,000 customers. If you have 1,000, think about how you can get the next 10,000. If you have 10,000 customers, how are you going to get, in this case, it's a lot of customers. How are you going to get the next tens of thousands,
Right,
maybe, or 100,000 if you're really, really bold. My point is, focus on that next zero, because everything changes every zero. So 100 customers, I can go door to door and get 100 customers. You can't really hard, fly around, whatever. 1,000 customers, that just breaks. 10,000 customers, that would never even work ever, right? And so I just look at things as like, um, figure out the journey. Now, we're at Mailshake. I think we're at 17,000 customers. So if I'm reading articles, I'm reading on like how companies who have hundreds of thousands of customers, millions of customers are marketing their business, and so I'm getting inspiration from the folks that have done it before. So, and don't worry about anything else. Put blinders on everything else, because if you have 100 customers and you want to get 1,000, it does not matter how you get 10,000, because you will never get there.
Now, there's some people, we talked about companies. Are there some particular people out there, leaders that inspire you and challenge you? And who would they be and why?
Yeah, I think Heaton Shaw is a really, really big inspiration to me. He's a really awesome product guy. He runs a company called Product Habits. I've learned a lot from him on everything product related, product marketing. Pep Laja from Conversion Excel Live or Conversion Excel. He's awesome because he's a no bullshit type person. So like he just like he's in Austin as well. I get to hang out with him every once in a while, and if I say something, he's like, no, that's wrong. That sounds like bullshit. And or like I was running an idea by him the other day, and he's like, that's not actually going to solve your problem. It's gonna help, but it's not going to solve the problem. You need to think about it this way. So like I like the things he pushes back on, and you don't need to know him or hang out with him to get this. You can see it in his content online. You can see it in his videos and his conference, Conversion Excel Live, I think. I like Neil Patel. Neil really pushes the limits in marketing. I like the fact that he's just like, he ranks for everything, and it's not from like him cheating his way to the top. I think he's just built a lot of content and tools. So this whole 10x content piece I've talked about, I think Neil has just done that time and time again. And I get inspiration from guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the big guys in the space. And I take a lot of things. I think Jeff, I really admire his ability to really hire and people, and I think in a recent interview he's like, I only do 3 things every day, and I get 8 hours of sleep every day. And then I think that goes to like the fact that he's hired really, really smart people. And Tony Hsieh is another great guy too. Now I think part of Amazon, but he's where I learned a lot of customer delight. If you read the book Delivering Happiness, what he's done on the e-commerce space with Zappos, over delivering every time. I think that's the key to really customer support.
Cool. Hey, other books besides the one you just mentioned that you're an author now too, right? So what books do you turn to when you're looking for advice or things like that?
Yeah, there's a book called 0 to 1. I think Peter Thiel wrote that book. Let's see. I read a lot. I actually do a lot of audiobooks. So probably once a month, I'm going through 2 or 3 books. So I'm trying to think through what else has been good. But yeah, I think 0 to 1 is really good. All the Jim Collins book, like Good to Great, Great by Choice, really good. Seth Godin's books are really, really good. What else? The David versus Goliath is really good. I think I like to read these business books that are broader. That just give me, like, I always try to get one piece of, like, one little nugget. But yeah, those are my favorites.
So if I talk to people that know you and interact with you all the time, what would they tell me is your kind of go-to motto or expression? Do you have one?
I don't know if I have a motto. I just usually say no. Everyone you're gonna know, anyone that knows me just says, like, I say no in a nice way. And I like that no may turn into a yes like 3 days later. But yeah, I think my go-to motto is like, are you sure? I don't think we need to do that.
So is that born out of wanting to focus more, and so you're saying no, or challenging the mindset before you say yes?
I always I got this habit because every time I say no, it makes the person on the other end convince me. And I don't need to be, it's not me that needs to be convinced. It's the person that needs to do as much research as possible to have a proper argument or case to do something. Um, and, um, and I want to see the real impact, because anytime someone comes with an idea, I, I did this thing where I made myself very inaccessible most of the day. And what I ended up doing is, what I ended up seeing is most people on my team. So I've got about like 30 people or so that work with me. Some of them report to me. Some of them, we're kind of working together. Some of them I have no business talking to. They're in development world and they're doing their own thing, but they still work on marketing, and I'm really close to the product. But my point is that most people, when I disappeared for a while, solved their own problems. And then because our time was limited to talk to them, we only talked about the most impactful things. And so it forced them to, like, one of the guys in my marketing team was like, I took like 10 pages of notes, and I was like, really think about what's the best way to make our 30 minutes work, because I knew I wouldn't be able to talk to you for another 3 weeks. As I was on paternity leave, essentially. And so what that did was, like, it made everybody really think about what's the best ideas I should be thinking about. And then I came back from paternity leave and I was like, guys, what happened to those ideas you didn't execute on? They're like, nothing. I'm like, well, exactly. That's why we should be thinking only about these ideas. So I was like, let's only do it this way now. But I'm going to be back every day. But I don't want to be talking about the bullshit on the bottom 80%. I only want to talk about the 20% at the top.
Yeah, that's great. So given all of that, right? The desire to focus and the demands on your time, like what's a really productive day look like for you versus one where you spend a lot of time on bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always leave some time for nothing. So I think a productive day is me. I'm a morning person, so 5:30 to 6:30 is when I wake up. I try to listen to a podcast, read an article or two, usually, or an audiobook. I try to just get some information in my head to get inspired or think. Then I'm cranking out emails. So by like 9, 10 o'clock, I have inbox zero, and that will not stay there for that long. But like, I've answered all of my team, any requirements of me, anyone waiting for me to move forward. That's all out the door. And I generally, I also do that, like, what are the 3 things I want to knock out that day? I have a 3 things, to-do list on Evernote. And yeah, I mean, just I try to knock out 1 or 2 of those things, and then it just kind of goes into the abyss of like chit-chatting for a while. I mean, my whole company, all my companies are remote, so Slack is kind of our water cooler. So I could just spend a whole day and do nothing. That's why I want to go and knock out everything on emails and Slack, and then go heads down. And then the second half of my day, usually after 2 o'clock, it's really quiet, and I love it that way. So I try to minimize phone calls and meetings. Again, 6 months ago, I just started saying I canceled everything on my calendar, like everything, I just said no to, and only people who responded back yes, that why is this canceled? Pretty much it removed like 80% of my meetings, 80-90% of my meetings, and about half of them never came back. And so every 6 months, I kind of just like scrub everything. I'm like, let's just kill everything, and then things will float back to the top that are really required. The things that just disappear are just complete waste, and there's everything in the middle that I need to reassess.
Well, that's actually fantastic advice. I like that.
I call it the purge.
Yeah, perfect. That's perfect. Hey, one kind of last question. Tell us something that would surprise our listeners about you or your experience, your companies.
Yeah. So one thing you'd be surprised with is how small our teams are. How little we do. Like, not in terms of like, we're not just twiddling our thumbs all day. I just mean that, like, we're just so laser focused on the couple things that we can do really, really well and be best at. And we just don't do a lot of other things. I think a lot of people would look at what I do and say I've got a lot of things figured out, and I don't. Like, I don't, like, when I still don't know what I want to do in life. I don't have as much of a direction as you would think. I have a number, right? I mean, my number is $50 million cash in my pocket. Why that number? I don't know. It's big enough to really chase, but small enough to where maybe I can achieve it in a 10-year window. And so yeah, I mean, everything else, it's kind of a lot of winging. And I've got, I used to be like, oh my God, I need to get this, like, I need to not wing things. I need to have a mission and drive. And I just got more comfortable with, like, you know what? I'm pretty sure a lot of other people don't know what the hell they're doing either. And like, I think I got a lot of inspiration from guys like Jason Fried, where they're just like, yeah, this is the Jason Fried from Basecamp, like, this is the last business I'm going to start. He runs, Basecamp's over $50 million in annual revenue. And he also doesn't know what's next or the direction from here. And I think that's okay, at least for me.
Cool. Hey, so I appreciate your perspective and your insight has been really, really valuable. Are there other thoughts or things you might want to leave as a wrap up around people getting started, or just other perspective you want to share?
Yeah. So one other thing I didn't discuss here, I think we should, is really about your network and relationships. I think a big part of growth in general comes from the people you are exposed to and the shared pool of knowledge. I mentioned earlier about, like, when you don't know something, you don't have an industry experience or channel experience, go talk to experts. Well, if those experts were your friends, then the byproduct of that is you just having all this ancillary knowledge of based off someone else's experience, so that prevent you from making a mistake without ever you asking for that information. So I think it's, whatever you're doing, you're building an e-commerce business, go look at the top e-commerce business owners in the world. Go to ICE, go to all the e-commerce events, go talk to the folks, go try to figure out what the guys, if you're $1 million e-commerce business, go figure out what the guys doing 10, 20 million, 5 million, 50 million, 100 million. What are they doing? What's the e-commerce owners, the founders, day to day? How big is their team? What's their margins? And you'd be surprised how easy it is to kind of get a hold of somebody. All you gotta do is start with an email. Like, hey, go make a list and go email the folks with one specific question on a Saturday morning. Guarantee everyone will respond. Most people will respond to you over the weekend. And make sure your question is detailed. And you'll be surprised how many responses you get to that. So I think build that network and your not advocates, but your kind of network, because I think you're going to learn a lot just in the osmosis of being around smart people who have done that, been there, or are in the weeds just as you are.
Sure. That's really, really good advice. I think, to your point, a lot of people kind of underestimate the value of those kind of networks and think about the tactics first. So that's really good perspective.
Yeah.
Well,
I put about a third of my day in that bucket, like, of where I spend my time.
Okay. No, excellent. Excellent. So thank you very much. I appreciate your insights. Really, really good stuff. To all the listeners, this is our 2Inspire series, and we thank Sujan Patel for joining us today, and look forward to the next series, and wish you the best of luck, Sujan. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.